The Bhagavad Gita with commentary by Sri Aurobindo. Chapter 15. The Three Purushas. The divine is manifest in a double soul of his mystery, a twofold power. He supports at once the spirit of mutable things that is all these existences, the Chara Purusha, and the immutable spirit that stands above them in his imperishable immobility of eternal silence and calm, the Akshara Purusha. And it is by the force of the divine in them that the mind and heart and will of man are so powerfully drawn in different directions by these two spirits, as if by opposing and incompatible attractions, one insistent to annul the other. But the divine is neither wholly the Chara Purusha, nor wholly the Akshara. If he is capable of being both at once, it is because he is other than they, Anyaha, the Purushottama, above all cosmos, and yet extended in the world, and extended in the Veda, in self-knowledge, and in cosmic experience. The world for the Gita is real, a creation of the Lord, a power of the eternal, a manifestation from the Parabrahman. And even this lower nature of the triple Maya is a derivation from the supreme divine nature. The Gita insists that we can and should, while we live, be conscious in the self and its silence, and yet act with power in the world of nature. And it gives the example of the divine himself, who is not bound by necessity of birth, but free, superior to the cosmos, and yet abides eternally in action. Varta eva cha karmani. Therefore, it is by putting on a likeness of the divine nature in its completeness that the unity of the double experience becomes entirely possible. The Gita finds the principle of that oneness in its supreme vision of the Purushottama. The man who has this knowledge of the Purushottama sees the entire sense both of the self and of things. He restores the integral reality of the divine. He unites the Chara and the Akshara in the Purushottama. He loves, worships, cleaves to and adores the supreme self of his and all existence, the one Lord of his and all energies, the close and far off, eternal, in and beyond the world. And he does this too with no single side or portion of himself, exclusive spiritualized mind, blinding light of the heart, intense but divorced from largeness, or sole aspiration of the will and works, but in all the perfectly illumined ways of his being and his becoming, his soul and his nature. Divine in the equality of his imperturbable self-existence, one in it with all objects and creatures, he brings that boundless equality, that deep oneness, down into his mind and heart and life and body, and founds on it in an indivisible integrality the trinity of divine love, divine works, and divine knowledge. This is the Gita's way of salvation.
Sri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamu Namadah Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyam Chandansi Yasya Paranani Yastam Veda Savedavit Adhaschordhvam Prasrutastasya Shakha गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नन्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा ततः पदं तत्परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी निर्मानमोहाजितसङ्गदोषा अध्यात्मनित्या विनिवृत्तकामाः द्वन्द्वैर्विमुक्ताः सुखदुःखसंज्ञैर्गच्छन्त्यमूढाः पदमव्ययं तत् न तद्भासयते सूर्यो न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनःषष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात् श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढा नानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्त्यात्मन्यवस्थितं यतन्तोऽप्यकृतात्मानो नैनं पश्यन्त्यचेतसः यदादित्यगतं तेजो जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्युमामकम् गामाविश्य च भूतानि धारयाम्यहमोजसा उष्णामि चौषधीः सर्वाः सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः अहं वैश्वानरो भूत्वा प्राणिनां देहमाश्रितः प्राणापानसमायुक्तः पचाम्यन्नं चतुर्विधं सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्तस्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरश्चाक्षर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कूटस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्त्यव्यय ईश्वरः यस्मात्क्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथितः पुरुषोत्तमः यो मामेवमसम्मूढो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमं स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदमुक्तं मया नघ एतद्बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतकृत्यश्च भारत। ओम इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे पुराणपुरुषोत्तमयोगो नाम पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः। श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु। हरये नमः। हरये नमः। हरये नमः।
The three Purushas. The Blessed Lord said, with its original source above in the eternal, its branches stretching below, the Ashwata is said to be eternal and imperishable. The leaves of it are the hymns of the Veda. He who knows it is the Veda knower. The branches of this cosmic tree extend both below and above, below in the material, above in the superphysical planes. They grow by the gunas of nature. The sensible objects are its foliage. Downward here into the world of men it plunges its roots of attachment and desire, with their consequences of an endlessly developing action. The real form of it cannot be perceived by us in this material world of man's embodiment, nor its beginning, nor its end, nor its foundation. Having cut down this firmly rooted Ashwata by the strong sword of detachment, one should seek for that highest goal whence, once having reached it, there is no compulsion of return to mortal life. I turn away, says the Vedantic verse, to seek that original soul alone from whom proceeds the ancient sempiternal urge to action. To be free from the bewilderment of this lower Maya, without egoism, the great vault of attachment conquered, all desires stilled, the duality of joy and grief cast away, always to be fixed in a pure spiritual consciousness. These are the steps of the way to that supreme infinite. There we find the timeless being which is not illumined by sun or moon or fire, but is itself the light of the presence of the eternal Purusha. Having gone thither they return not. That is the highest eternal status of my being. It is an eternal portion of me that becomes the jiva in the world of living creatures and cultivates the subjective powers of Prakriti, mind and the five senses. When the Lord takes up this body, he brings in with him the mind and the senses, and in his going forth too, casting away the body, he goes taking them as the wind takes the perfumes from a vase. The ear, the eye, the touch, the taste, and the smell, using these, and the mind also, he enjoys the objects of mind and sense as the indwelling and overdwelling soul. The deluded do not perceive him in his coming in and his going forth, or in his staying and enjoying an assumption of quality. They perceive who have the eye of knowledge. The yogins who strive see the Lord in themselves, but though they strive to do so, the ignorant perceive him not, as they are not formed in the spiritual mold. The light of the sun that illumines all this world, that which is in the moon and in fire, that light know as from me. I have entered into this form of earth, and am the spirit of its material force, and sustained by my might these multitudes. I am the Godhead of Soma, who by the rasa, the sap in the earth mother, nourishes all plants and trees. I, having become the flame of life, sustain the physical body of living creatures, and united with prana and apana, digest the four kinds of food. I am lodged in the heart of all. From me are memory and knowledge and their absence, and that which is known by all the Vedas and by all forms of knowing am I, and I indeed the knower of Veda and the maker of Vedanta. There are two Purushas in this world, the immutable and impersonal, and the mutable and personal. The mutable is all these existences. The Kutastha, the high-seated consciousness of the Brahmic status, is called the immutable. But other than these two is that highest spirit called the Supreme Self, who enters the three worlds and upbears them, the imperishable Lord. Since I am beyond the mutable and am greater and higher even than the immutable, in the world and the Veda, I am proclaimed as the Purushottama, the Supreme Self. He who undiluted thus has knowledge of me as the Purushottama, adores me with all knowledge and in every way of his natural being. Thus by me the most secret Shastra, the supreme teaching and science, has been told, O sinless one. Absolutely to know it is to be perfected in understanding and successful in the supreme sense, O Bharata. Thus ends the 15th chapter of Purushottama Yoga from the Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, stating the knowledge of Brahman and the science of yoga through the conversation of Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Om, peace, peace, peace.